Welcome to the New Quantum Era. I'm your host, Sebastian Hassinger. On this episode, I'll be speaking with one of the first physicists that I met outside of work when I was at IBM Quantum, Professor Javad Shabani from NYU. He's a professor of physics. He's also the director of the Center of Quantum Information Physics and the director of NYU Quantum Institute, which is a recently founded center in New York, which is doing some really great things. Javad is a condensed matter physicist. He is really interesting in terms of where his curiosity has brought him. You'll hear some of his early explorations into the quantum Hall effect, how that sort of brought him to spin qubits, early days in spin qubits, and then into topological materials, and now exploring more on the frontiers of the material side of fabricating superconducting qubits, which is really fascinating. Javad's great to talk to. I've learned tons from him over the years, and I've always been struck by how great a teacher he is as well to his own students. He's really devoted, and I learned from him that there needs to be a lot of effort in sort of defining what he calls sort of middle-sized problems. Small problems are relatively easy to define, and there are a lot of them in textbooks, and professors can come up with them for sort of earlier stage students. Big problems are obviously well known and enumerated in the field, and those are suitable for sort of thesis challenges. And what's missing is sort of the middle of the academic career, sort of mid-sized problems that may take a semester or a year to work through, but have hope for a near-term solution or a near-term conclusion. And so he puts a lot of effort into thinking about those types of challenges. So we're going to talk a lot about what he's done in his career and what he's doing right now at NYU and at the NYU Quantum Institute. So I hope you enjoy.
Hi, Javad. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Sebastian. Great having me.
I've actually been wanting to have this conversation with you for quite a while. We've known each other since probably 2018, I think. So pretty long now. That was when we had the academic summit at IBM at TJ Watson. So I know you well, but my listeners may not. So can you start by introducing yourself and talking a little bit about sort of your quantum journey?
Sure. It's great, to be here and talking to you, Sebastian. But we talked a lot over the years. But yeah, so right now I'm a professor at NYU and a director for NYU Quantum Institute and Center for Quantum Information Physics. And this is kind of funny, actually, how we got here, right? I did my undergrad. I was in electrical engineering, and this was, when communication was very big, and condensed matter and devices and Moore's law and all of these things were kind of the key in every talk and all the excitement. And I remember one day I looked at online for a project in quantum or anything, I guess, interesting, and I found this open book by John Preskill about quantum information. And I read it and I was fascinated by it. So I actually ended up doing a double major, electrical engineering and physics. And
that was at your bachelor's level?
That was my bachelor's. This is kind of pre-2000.
And that was Sharif, right? Yeah.
Sharif University.
Yeah. Cool.
And then when I came, for graduate studies, at Princeton, I, did generic condensed matter, quantum Hall effect. And it was fascinating, but, it was kind of like going back, to the physics, but I was in electrical engineering, which is kind of funny that these things were always kind of intertwined.
Right.
And, the last year of my PhD, kind of, fast forwarding a bit, I worked with Jason Petta and, with Mansur Shaigan, who was my advisor, trying to work on a spin qubits. Jason Petta just arrived at Princeton, had already delivered this one qubit, or they recognized this quantum dot physics as a single qubit. And it was really cool, right? It was the first time, we had this level of control. And so, I kind of, for my postdoc, I went to Harvard and worked where Jason was working with Charlie Marcus. And, the project was literally going from 1 qubit to 2 qubit. So this was kind of the first time, Jason came to Princeton, but then, the first qubit was demonstrated. So I was really fascinated. I worked with them, kind of got to know the subject. And then, as exciting as it was, I sort of said, oh, maybe I should do, more of this. So I went to Harvard to work with Charlie Marcus to kind of work on taking this single qubit to 2 qubit, right? That was the whole thing back then. And it was hard, right? A lot of nanofab, a lot of material science. And you kind of find this deeper understanding of everything that can go wrong, right? Because now,
there's a lot.
There's a lot, exactly. I mean, you know the details, right? But sort of, finding something in quantum experiments, I mean, it's hard, but when you want to control that event, it's even, gets harder because now you need precision on everything. So that took, a couple of years. And then, Charlie Marcus moved to Copenhagen. And I kind of was looking around and, this concept of topological superconductivity and topological quantum computing was something that it kind of stuck with me from when I did my PhD, because I was doing quantum Hall effect. And, 5.5 was the one that was supposed to be non-abelian and kind of perfect for this. But, very theoretically oriented, and also the experiment, it was like kind of two fields, the theory and experiment were going.
Right.
But then I thought that, topological superconductivity has the qubit, has the topology, has all this nanofab and material science. So I joined, Santa Barbara, group of Chris Baumstrom and back then John Martinez.
And just for a second, so you mentioned quantum Hall effect and 5.5. So that refers to the spin of the material, the superconducting material. Is that right?
No, it's a semiconductor, right? And then when you apply this 2D magnetic field, you can go to this different filling factor, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the integer quantum Hall that got Nobel Prize to 1 Klitzing. Then the fractions are the ones with the odd denominator, like 1/3, 2/3. And that's where, Daniel Sui, Horst Dormer, and, they got Nobel Prize, Bob Laughlin. And then there was this new one that was even denominator. So 2.5, 5.5, that it was hard to describe. And it was kind of associated with these non-abelian particles, kind of the excitations of that state, maybe is, 7.5 and a lot of these. And there was a huge debate whether these are the real non-abelian or not. But in quantum Hall, when you have such a huge magnetic field, it was kind of hard to decide, right? I mean, there was definitely a state. I mean, I think that's established. But that kind of was in the back of my mind, right? So when I went to Microsoft, and that was kind of the beginning of this topic, with Majorana fermions that was kind of emerging, which was a different thing.
Is that when the nanowire fabrication idea, was that was at UCSB?
So there was like
initially?
Exactly. So theoretically, people were trying to find an alternative to this 5.5 physics. Because 5.5, you had to be really cold temperatures, even colder than dilution fridges, and really high magnetic field, right? And it was hard to control this thing, right? But then people said, what about if it's not as demanding? So this nanowire proposal, in so many ways, was kind of a response to that physics, that you can have these zero-dimensional Majoranas at the end of the wire, but you need field, but not that much. You need material science, but not a 40 million mobility gallium arsenide, right? So things were a little bit kind of discounted and more possible. It sounded like more plausible. On the other hand, at the end, you wanted the qubit, you want to scale up. It was kind of hard to see how you do it in quantum Hall.
Because you're really, I mean, with nanowires, you're growing the device by depositing semiconductor on superconducting material. Is that right?
Yes.
It's like a sandwich?
Yeah, so on the nanowire, they would grow the semiconducting nanowire, and then they would put the superconductor on half of it or part of it.
On half of it, right.
But you could do wafer scale in so many ways. You still had to move around the nanowires, and my contribution there was that, we just did this 2-deck, which is a 2-dimensional semiconductor, and we added the superconductor on top, and then with nano fabrication, you go and carve out the wires that you want. So it became, more in line with the scaling things that the CMOS technology and others are doing. And so this thing happened a little bit sequentially. I mean, one of the biggest challenges back there was that, when you go to the superconducting qubit, people like aluminum oxide was so established, and people love it because it has so many great properties. But on the super semi, it was hard to choose one, right? Everybody from Quantum Hall wanted gallium arsenide, but gallium arsenide has a Schottky barrier. You can't make a good metallic contact, let alone superconducting contact, right? So everybody, I guess it was kind of known, but then it was rediscovered that indium arsenide is the material of choice. And then we did aluminum on indium arsenide, first on nanowires, then on the 2-decks. So
that's what you were designing were planar junctions, right? Like it was 2-dimensional rather than so a simpler construction. So that's how you could potentially leverage that higher scale fabrication techniques.
Exactly. I mean, when we were in Santa Barbara, we were still pursuing this. I think the nanowire system, which was kind of still 1-dimensional. When I moved back to New York and started my lab, we kind of followed this, I guess, Josephson junction style, and I guess wires in a way that, the current now is not going along the wire, is going, on the other side. But the advantage is that now you have phase of the superconducting junction as a very well-defined knob. So you could actually control things with the superconducting phase. And then we kind of piggyback on everything superconducting circuit just with the super semi now. And that opened up a whole new thing, right? And then, I think it was in 2018, 19 that we saw these signatures of, superconducting closing and reopening. We published this paper in PRL that really looked like a phase transition and perhaps, topological superconductivity.
Right. And most recently you've had a paper published in PRX about gate-mon qubits.
That's right.
So these are superconducting. These are more like a transmon or a fluxonium type superconducting device, right?
Yeah.
So that shift, is that because just interested in a different topic, or was there sort of a dead end with the planar junctions in terms of control or some other aspect of the design?
Yeah, so I actually see them very complementary in a way that, we had these junctions, and obviously we want to make these topological states. There is disorder. There are lots of other things that you have to slowly figure out, and we were doing it, right? It's a slow progress, right? But then we had the junctions available, right? Not maybe for this topology because it still needs magnetic field and the superconducting thing has to be thin. But we kind of knew that when it is ready, we have to run it as a qubit. So we said, look, why not? We just gonna make a qubit and then see how it is.
So it's the underlying superconducting qubit that eventually that'll be an aspect of the eventual Majorana or topological.
Yeah, that's
qubit.
what I'm thinking. And again, back then,
that makes sense.
In nanowires, they had done it, and it kind of really showed, interesting stuff. And then we sort of said, look, well, let's just do it. And it is hard. I mean, it turned out that it is a tough problem. Because one of the advantages that the aluminum oxide systems don't have is that semiconductors, you can control their properties with a gate voltage, like very much like a transistor. So you can actually turn off and on these qubits very fast, right? In the nanosecond regime. And
and in terms of coupling them, right? You're talking about like coupling and uncoupling the qubits.
Yeah, it could be the qubits itself. It could be the coupling in the middle. It kind of goes, all aspects of this. And we found out that actually maybe because of the qubits were not so far the qubits are not that good because we think indium arsenide is piezoelectric and maybe there is something fundamental with this material. Maybe not. I mean, we are still exploring. But definitely as a coupler, it can actually do quite well, right? So now that we know we can do microwave, maybe we can do topology. We have been trying try to merge these things together for fast manipulation, right? So it's still work in progress.
Interesting. That's so interesting. It feels more and more like there's this emergent generation of qubits that are combining aspects of microwave, of photonics, of superconductor, like all of these different learnings from these different experiments in the sort of the first or second wave of qubits.
Right.
Is that something that you sort of see as eventually we'll have these very complex hybrid systems that are qubits that combine a bunch of things we've learned from all these different experimental modalities?
Exactly. I think, a lot of these things are also inspirational. Like, I was quoting myself yesterday. I was trying to talk to a theory friend, and I was like, behind every great experimentalist, there is a greater theorist. and for example, Charlie Tahan, that I guess he has been really advocating for these semiconducting qubits that come in any variety, but hopefully in group 4, because we know silicon and germanium. These things are the things that we can go to the CMOS foundries and maybe make millions of this. And maybe that's
the dream, right?
That's the dream, right?
Is use just the garden variety semiconductor CMOS technologies and make millions and millions and millions of them.
So that was really kind of, I would say, the inspiration behind most of the things that we have been doing. And in indium arsenide, it was kind of, I don't want to say low-hanging fruit, but we figured it out and it worked really nice. And I think it has become the textbook example of anything super semi you want to try, right? But then in case of qubit, obviously it didn't give us what we wanted, at least the regular superconducting qubit. For topology, maybe it still is the way. And that, because of that, in the last 5 years, I've been trying to do this thing with germanium, right? Try to kind of get this thing on a group 4, same super semi, and then see if we can scale this thing up. And we have a paper who will come out actually this week, I think, or maybe next week.
Oh, great!
That it's accepted in Nature Nano. It is basically a huge material effort with the inspiration from this discussion that we just had.
Oh, great!
That how can I? Because it's kind of from the material science point of view, it's really exciting and interesting and puzzling at the same time. Like, let's say you have a superconductor, you want to put it on a semiconductor, right? That's usually easy. Like, I want to put aluminum on indium arsenide, it's very easy. But if I want to put indium arsenide on aluminum, it doesn't work. Like, because these interfaces are polar and they are not compatible, usually material A goes very well on B, but B doesn't go on A. So
that's so interesting.
But you want a Josephson junction vertical, you need the stack.
Right?
Yeah. And same thing with aluminum. Actually, aluminum oxide, the bottom is crystalline, oxide is amorphous, and then the top is not as good as the bottom, obviously, because you're kind of growing on this thing, right? And then we think of TLS, we think about a lot of things that, maybe the variety of the junction, we should make them uniform, and IBM has been doing a great job in terms of annealing and things like that, right? So, but, I've been asking myself, how can you do this, right? How can you really do a super junction in a vertical direction? Which ended up in this paper I just mentioned to you, that we have been able to make germanium superconducting by just doping it with gallium. So now I can dope it and grow germanium, it becomes superconducting. I turn off my doping, a semiconducting germanium. I turn on my doping, I create another superconducting germanium.
Wow.
Now I have a 3-inch Josephson junction on a wafer scale, right?
Wow.
And then you can go and make these 10 micron pixels, and now I can put 20 million of these junctions on one wafer, right? I don't know how good they are. I don't know if it's going to be.
Yeah.
But these are the things that just really drives me, right? Because now I can do a super semi on a group 4. That's going to kind of lead. And maybe germanium is good enough. Maybe we have to go to silicon. I'm really excited about this.
That's cool. So next stage would be characterizing what you've grown, and then trying to see what kind of device performance you can get out of it. That's amazing. That's super exciting. So that's an example of what you've done at NYU. Is that within the context of the larger NYU Quantum Center that you've just launched?
Yeah, so that's very exciting. So we started a few years ago with Center for Quantum Information Physics, and the goal is, look, quantum is a hard topic, right? Quantum computing is even harder, and we need help across the board. We need to collaborate, even nationally and internationally. And, if this marathon we want to do well, we have to do it. So I think these centers are the key. And we had these centers, in physics department to really kind of focus and strategize how we're going to approach quantum. and we have been successful locally in the last few years. But more exciting was, as you know, and you're very, very aware, maybe more than me, is that, look, it's a whole ecosystem there. Like there is application side, there is algorithmic side. Hardware is probably a small piece of this as we kind of grow, right?
A crucial piece.
A crucial piece, exactly. We don't want to, we want the hardware to be ours for sure.
Yeah.
But then there's a whole, there is a chemistry piece, there is this material science, engineering, scaling, all that. So that's why, with the new, actually, we have an office of science and technology, and with the leadership of, Dr. Juan De Pablo, who recently moved from University of Chicago to NYU. We identified quantum as a hot topic that we need to invest on at the university level, and we established this NYU Quantum Institute. So this institute kind of goes across all disciplines, right? It's not about physics, it's about engineering, it's about collaboration, it's about application side, algorithmic development. We have Quran, we have math department. And same thing from chemistry, like computational problems, like the quantum chemistry. You need to go to the experts and then see, look, if this quantum algorithm is any good, right? And can you do better, right? So we are really coordinating this now as, a university-wide operation. And I think, a couple of things makes it super exciting in New York. Like obviously NYU is at the heart of New York, right? We are in Washington Square. But a lot of these kind of application things, the end users are basically in big cities, including New York, right? People who care at financial institutions, people like insurance, medical for sensing and communication. And so I think we would be basically the hub or the connector or the interface basically between, hardcore science and kind of, keeping the line and honest and, developing things. And then on the other end, we have people who really need this. So they'd love to be at the forefront of this. So kind of connecting this together, I think that's one of our mission. Obviously,
do you see this being somewhat analogous to the Chicago Quantum Exchange that the University of Chicago created back in, I think, 2017 or 18?
Certainly.
Is it sort of the New York? I mean, there are a bunch of these regional centers, right? It feels like, in a way, clearly New York City should be the center of the region, and it feels like a almost overdue investment from is the state or NYU and the state are collaborating on sort of larger ecosystem development?
So we love to, obviously, right? And we do actually talk to Chicago Exchange and in particular with Ashalam about the lessons and then how do we actually follow up on that. But again, as you can imagine, each state is different and the priorities are different and the level of investment. So we are working.
That's the argument. That's the argument for a regional center, right? Because there are differences in terms of priorities and the capabilities and resources, et cetera. So
so we are working at city level and the state level, but definitely at the NYU level, we have. Our strengths is kind of, all the finance institutes and kind of a lot of people and also the population, right? We have more than 1 million high schoolers in New York City, right? So, and a lot of them are interested in AI and quantum and how this is going to develop, right? So in terms of educational aspects, this kind of north, and New York by itself as a state, plus, Connecticut, New Jersey, there is this whole, I think, ecosystem that hopefully we will develop into something that the state and federal is going to support, like Chicago. But, I think already like Columbia, NYU, Stevens, City College, Princeton, Yale, RPI, Cornell. We are collaborating on smaller things, in different proposals and all that. And we will, I'm sure at some point we will have an umbrella. But
and that incremental sort of bottoms up collaborative approach is really great. I mean, I think that lays the foundation and it exposes the patterns that are effective, right? Like if there's a specific, collaborative partnership that emerges between whatever AFRL and RPI and NYU, for example, then you can codify that and scale it up in some way by bringing the region to bear. That's really cool.
And I think you also the more you want and the more you're open, that also kind of changes things. Like, there is the CHIPS Act that, in Nordec, there is a quantum thing, in terms of how you make quantum foundries and things like that. And we are part of that, right? So through that, now we are connected, with NY creates, people who actually care about
Right.
200 millimeter, 300 millimeter operations. We have our engineering department, kind of engaged in the quantum effort. At the same time, with C2QA, Brookhaven operation. And so we are trying to actually be proactive on that. I think a lot of these things, sometimes you don't know what you can collaborate on. But if you are kind of open-minded and, you are willing to learn, it's lots of opportunities that come your way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also, what I've seen over the last, 7 or 8 years is, each, you can almost think of each university that has a quantum information research sort of agenda, has a lot of the same, themes, right? It's materials, it's, building the many body systems and simulations, it's, algorithms, as you said. And then when universities start collaborating with each other, they start to get more nuanced understanding of like, oh, within algorithms, we're better at chemistry, or we're better at, optimization or whatever. Within materials, here are our strengths, here's the other university strengths. The more you start to glue these pieces together, the more you see, those complementary kind of combinations and collaborations emerging.
Exactly.
So, it's very exciting. And you just had, I think, was it the 5th or 6th New York Quantum Summit?
I think it was 4th Quantum Summit.
Okay.
It sounds like a lot
good.
longer.
I haven't missed as many as I thought I'd missed. So is that that summit, it has been, initially, I think you started with Columbia, right? It was NYU and Columbia that started the summit?
So when I joined NYU, we had this joint quantum symposium, I think it was called.
Right, that's right.
That was a joint effort between Flatiron, Columbia, and NYU, which we loved.
Right.
And then some of us moved on, and then people just had different things, and basically we decided that like anything else, you have to put resources behind it, and then some people eventually NYU kind of decided that we have those resources, so we kind of turned that into this quantum summit. So actually, if you count those joint seminars, I think this would be the 6th.
Okay.
You're right, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
But something that is also amazing in the 6 years or so that we have done this is that back then, you could make any quantum claim and people will ask each other and panic and all that, right? Now, there is so much knowledge and education that we're kind of vaccinated to some of these hypes and this and that, right? So that's another amazing thing, when I went to this year, it's not that people don't know. They want to know more. They want to know the state of the art. They want to know what is, in the next 5 years. It's not that what is quantum anymore, right? What is a qubit anymore, right? It's amazing how far we have come. Even at IBM, remember, we were working together on kind of basic stuff. Now, there are 100 qubits. I just told you my postdoc was on 2, right? 5, hundreds of qubits that are 10, many times better than what I used to do, right? And I also think, a lot of times we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but sometimes we don't have enough wheels. So it's not that, if Chicago has it, or California has it, or Colorado has it.
Absolutely.
They're all. We need to be more and bigger, I think.
Absolutely.
And then also be open to collaboration and sharing, right? We don't want to spend time on doing the exact same thing. But I do feel with this summit, for example, like we bring people from consulting firms, from finance, from insurance companies, very wide variety, government labs, right? As you said, the FRL, Brookhaven, MIT Lincoln Lab, and the same thing from academics, coming in with the hope to sort of see how we can move things together, right? How excited it should be. And then every year we come back with some new things that, we did this quantum networking in New York City. I don't know if I told you about that.
Right.
So we have 5 nodes in New York, in Manhattan and Brooklyn.
That's incredible.
Right?
Yeah.
And, NYU doesn't have a campus in so many ways like other campuses, but because we're distributed, we actually own the fibers in the IT program. So we can actually use this for short distance quantum communication. And short distance is the key in Manhattan because, the 3 dB of losing a photon is usually a few kilometers, 10 kilometers or so.
Right.
So this came out of a collaboration with QNEC, which is a startup company, and then Cisco now is interested. I mean, there's a whole ecosystem around this now. That let's do quantum networking in New York, right? That has become a thing now.
That's really cool. I mean, it does seem like the financial sector in particular might be very interested in quantum
Exactly.
communication. So that's fitting. I love the way, you've described your own sort of interests all the way from the most fundamental characteristics of materials and their behaviors with one another, all the way up to 300 millimeter fab or wafer fabrication, and the potential for building scale resources to actually do that, to manufacture that at scale. It feels like that's it's that ability to straddle that incredibly broad set of challenges from the quantum nature of the material all the way up to the industrial scale of the devices. So is that like when you're sort of choosing your next sort of stage of your experimentation, are you thinking about that balance, or is it just sort of it's naturally sort of one foot in front of the other?
No, I kind of remember I said, I was electrical engineering, and then I kind of did double major with physics. So I think I've always was this applied person that kind of, thinks about the physics that kind of, I want to see the extrapolation that kind of lines up with the engineering side. And because, fundamental stuff are as important as the engineering side of things. If you look at, the 2025 Nobel Prize in Physics, right? I guess you interviewed John. That study was really fundamental, and now there's a whole industry after that, right? And it shows that both have real values and maybe different mindsets, but that's what I love to do, to kind of like discover new things, but you have to ask for our return of investment, right? You're going to do this. You want to do group 4, right? You don't want to go group 6 because if you're thinking about 300 millimeter, nobody guarantees, group 4 you can make it superconducting, but that's where you want to bang your head to the wall.
Right. Well, I'm so excited to hear about this paper coming out in Nature Nano. I'm looking forward to reading it and looking forward to seeing how good those junctions are once you start to characterize them.
Me too.
That's great, Javad. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been really, really interesting.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the podcast, a production of the New Quantum Era, hosted by me, Sebastian Hassinger, with theme music by OCH. You can find past episodes on www.newquantumera.com or on Blue Sky at newquantumera.com. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and tell your quantum curious friends to give it a listen.